In the beginning was the void, and from the void a universe was born. Shock waves radiated out, scattering suns, compressing stardust into rock, rock into asteroids. A new planet was formed. This was the Earth 4.5 billion years ago. A fiery crucible of boiling lava, pounded by meteors, wrapped in clouds of steam and poison gases. Gradually, the planet cooled. Steam condensed into ocean. Floating on thick magma, the young continents danced in slow motion around the globe. Unrecognizable out on the far edge of the supercontinent Gondwana was the land we now call Australia. Its rocks are ancient. Some have lain exposed on the Earth's surface for longer than life has existed on dry land. Wind and rain have sculpted them over the eons. Shallow seas have sometimes drowned them. Cold has shattered the ancient fossil beds. So the record of life in Australia is sparse and interrupted. But elsewhere on the planet, the early inhabitants of the primeval swamps have left their bones behind them. Air-gulping fish were the first of these creatures to struggle from pond to pond across the mud. In time, fins became limbs, gills became lungs, fish became amphibians. Amphibians gave rise to reptiles. And some of the reptiles, 300 million years ago, arrived at one of natural history's great parting of the ways. One group rose up on powerful hind legs and strode out to dominate the land. Meanwhile, another reptile had taken a different route. Cold blood became warm blood. Scales became fur. And as the dinosaurs grew ever more gigantic, the mammals became small and inconspicuous. Yet the mammals survived, spreading across Gondwana and into Australia. Beneath the dinosaurs' feet, the land itself was shifting still. The surge and flow of magma far beneath was tearing Gondwana apart. South America, Antarctica, and Australia remained joined. But steep-walled chasms formed at their stretching margins. 110 million years ago, the Australian portion of Gondwana was a cool and pleasant land of cycads, ferns, and conifers. For the dinosaurs, it was a Cretaceous paradise. Here, for example, is Allosaurus, as tender a mother as you could hope to meet. But meeting Allosaurus was probably the last thing the plant-eating dinosaurs hoped to do. And this is Tamimus, with the long neck and legs of an ostrich or an emu, and a goanna's appetite for other people's eggs. Low-risk meals, and there are high-risk meals. Eating baby Allosaurus would have been one of the highest risks in all Gondwana. Australia's inhabitants were almost cut off from the rest of Gondwana. Already, this was becoming a land apart. In the cool rivers, labyrinthodont amphibians flourished. They died out elsewhere 30 million years earlier. Australia's mammals were even more unusual. One of the earliest known was Steropodon, an ancient relative of the platypus and the echidna. Like its reptile ancestors and its monotreme descendants, it lay eggs. Once hatched, its young would feed on mother's milk, like other mammals. And then, some 65 million years ago, disaster struck. In the seas, ammonites and great marine reptiles would vanish. From the skies, the pterosaurs, the flying reptiles, would disappear. And on the land, on every continent on Earth, the dinosaurs breathed and trumpeted their last. For 140 million years, the dinosaurs had walked the Earth. Their doom spelled opportunity for the humble mammals. They'd survived almost unnoticed beneath the dinosaurs' feet. Now they were set to follow in the giants' footsteps and to dominate the planet in their turn. The age of Gondwana was also ending. South America, Antarctica, and Australia were finally pulled apart. The widening gap became deep ocean. Strong currents circled the pole, locking the cold into Antarctica. The marsupials of Gondwana were scattered by this continental carve-up. In South America, they would have to compete with invaders from the north. Those animals stranded in Antarctica suffered a grimmer fate. Australia, in its early isolation, was a kindlier continent than it is today. The dinosaurs had gone. No giant predators stalked the land. For marsupial mammals and ground-dwelling birds alike, this was the promised land. Clearings in the rainforest, the sheep-sized Napacaldia grazed and courted. Its descendants would include some of the largest marsupials that ever lived. In the canopy above, primitive possums and cuscus clambered. Ancestral potoroos and bandicoots scurried across the forest floor. And in the green cradle of Australia's forests, marsupials diversified and flourished. But hard times lay ahead. Ice ages gripped the polar regions. Less water fell as rain elsewhere. The old world was disappearing. A new kind of forest, drier and more open, began to replace the rainforest. And as their habitat changed, the marsupials adapted too. One of Napacaldia's descendants was this hulking browser, Paracestes. Its size enabled it to reach high up the tree trunks and made it more than a match for the pouched predator of the woodlands, the thylacine. The polar ice sheets expanded. Australia's forests dried and died. Here, at the edge of the spreading deserts, herds of diprotodon grazed the saltbush. These rhino-sized animals were the heaviest marsupials there had ever been. Leo, the so-called marsupial lion, was actually no larger than a leopard, too small to tackle an adult diprotodon. But woe betide the youngster who failed to keep up with the herd. Because Thylacaleo had evolved from plant eaters, it inherited no canine teeth. Instead, it grew stabbing incisors and unique blade-like premolars that could shear through flesh and bone. The largest carnivore of arid Australia was not a mammal, but a lizard. Megalania would have dwarfed its modern cousins, the goannas of Australia and the dragons of Komodo. It grew to a monstrous 7 meters in length. It was capable of sudden bursts of speed and could have overpowered the largest diprotodon. But why waste precious energy to catch your own meal, when by sheer intimidation you can steal someone else's? Less than 100,000 years ago, Australia was still a land of giants. Huge flightless birds browsed like feathered giraffes on the higher branches. There were reptilian herbivores as well. The horned tortoise cropped the tough scrub of the Australian bush. It was well protected, but its most effective defense was its ability to retaliate. Australia's isolation had long since ended. 15 million years ago, the crustal plate on which it lay crunched into the southern edge of Asia, and the islands of Indonesia became the stepping stones between two worlds. Birds and bats could cross the narrow seas with ease. Then, the first land rodent made the crossing. Tough and resilient, the newcomer made itself at home. But the next arrivals would change Australia to suit their needs. Homo sapiens arrived in Australia some 60,000 years ago. Humans brought with them skills which would transform the continent, the making of tools and weapons, which would make them Australia's most effective predators. Language and culture with which to interpret their new world and to pass on their understanding to their young. And above all, the mastery of fire. With fire, they remade the landscape. Year after year, they burnt the bush, until only the fire-adapted plants survived. The broad-leafed forests that had recycled precious moisture disappeared. Droughts became frequent. Whether it was fire and climate change or the spears of the new invaders that caused the extinction of Australia's largest herbivores, we still don't know. We do know that by 20,000 years ago, they'd gone. The survivors were the small, the wary, and the swift. With so much of their prey gone, the large predators went too, until only the thylacine was left. 4,500 years ago, it too disappeared from mainland Australia, driven out by the dingo. It survived in isolated Tasmania until a new wave of invaders drove it to extinction. To the Aboriginal people watching from the shore, they first appeared as white-winged water birds, serene and graceful. But behind the billowing sails were upright masts and horizontal yards. The new invaders were a people of straight lines and right angles, stone walls and wire fences, money and exchange. With hard-hoofed animals and axes, the Europeans tried to reshape the new land to resemble the one they'd left. More and more newcomers came. Most now seldom venture beyond the squared-off pavements of their cities by the sea. For humans now, a decade is an era, a century, an age. But in the time scale that Australia lives by, the entire history of humankind has occupied no longer than a heartbeat. Australia's story has a further 50 million years to run until it merges finally with the great landmass to its north. By that time, surely, human beings and all their works will have gone the way of the dinosaur and the diprotodon. And species yet unborn will disembark from the Australian arc at the long journey's end.
Coming up, Lost Worlds Week continues with some flying creatures you wouldn't want to find in your backyard bird feeder. It's a pterodactyl attack on Paleo World, next from TLC.